Good evening. I changed some stuff around in my place this weekend, which means there's now a table in front of my plant light, which means I can't move my plant light, but I can hopefully make my camera look better with this light over my head. Okay. So we'll figure out lighting it at some point down the line for better options. But, it's like I said recently, if you wait to do something until you're perfect at it, you're never going to do it. Maybe that's the neurospicy thing of let's just jump all in. So I was kind of thinking today about talking about that topic of neurodivergence in the American school system, and mostly just my experiences. I'm sure that y'all have some stuff that you could talk about. I seem to have lots of neurodivergent friends, as we wander in packs, as they say. Other than being diagnosed gifted, I don't have any other neurodivergent diagnoses at this point, but family, friends, there's a lot of us. So I think there's so much that could be said here. None of this is scientific. All of this is going to be my opinions and my experience, and almost in a way, it's there's a lot of, at this point in my life, questioning what of my experience was so different than the experience of other people I know. And it's a weird perspective to finally with CPTSD to finally kind of get more engaged in the present and more aware of my surroundings, and more, I want to say I've spent more time processing things about my life. So it opens up a lot of doors and a lot of questions about is everybody else living like this? It's kind of interesting. So I'll tell you guys before I get into that. Yeah, I redid stuff in my house. I've repotted 25 plants this weekend, and they're big. But I don't know. I'm a little. I don't like to let my plants go. If I had friends to give them to, I would. But as I've said before, everyone I know has cats. And I don't know. I'm not on the level of some people, and we could talk more plants in another time. I could have done a live this weekend, but I was repotting plants for 3 hours, so I don't know if anyone would actually care to watch me do that. And I'm not an expert at potted plants either by any means. Like I said, I like to just basically push all the buttons and get in there and see how stuff works and see the results of it. So, yeah. A lot of repotting. I've got a lot of begonias. I split up. I have a peace lily that had gotten huge, so I split my peace lily up basically into 4 plants. So we're gonna see what happens in a few weeks. I'm learning things here and there, so maybe down the line I'll talk more about plants and gardening. And we had fun this weekend. Went to the park. There's a really great dog park here in the Buffalo area that's off leash. I can post the info for those that are interested. Technically, I think your animals should be spayed or neutered if you're taking them to the park, which I don't think everyone's are. I think that's actually technically a park rule, but people really like to be bending the rules sometimes. As long as everybody's separated and well behaved, it's whatever. We had a good time. So I'm going to post also, I watched a video on YouTube about this product, and as I've said before, I'm not sponsored or compensated by any products, but I've been gluten-free for 20 years, so I've tried all kinds of gluten-free stuff, and that's probably another video that I can go into at some point. Someone was asking me today that I mentioned about flares, when my sciatic was hurting and other health issues that I have. So I think that's another video to go down the line of my health issues that I've had over the years and what that looks like for me. And it's been quite a journey. And it's funny, as a vegan and as someone who was who's been involved in the wellness industry, a lot of people have this, I would always say, like, misconception that the people that are in the wellness industry are like the healthiest people that have no problems. And sometimes as a vegan, like, some people use that like you have health problems as a reason to kind of talk out of veganism or you know, say that it's really not that great. But I don't know why I'm getting some notifications right now all of a sudden through my phone. Oh, I don't have my internet on my phone either, do I? Hold on. This might interrupt my feed on Instagram. We'll see. So, what was I saying? Yeah, that whole, like, you know, Instagram just stopped. I'm going to give it a minute to catch up. There we go. I think I'm back on Instagram again. So, yeah, that whole idea that if someone's vegan, somehow we're supposed to be perfect and have no health problems, it's nonsense. And the whole thing, I will say the majority of people that I've known that have worked in the wellness industry got into it because they had some kind of health problems. So I think that'd be an interesting discussion to get into at some point. But I have been gluten-free since 2003. I went gluten-free for health reasons, went through a whole lot of stuff with that. Found out later through DNA testing that I carry the genes for celiac disease, so I'm really not interested in eating it again. I don't like how it makes me feel, and I can talk about all the problems that causes for me. But I bought a new product at Wegmans this week. I like to try all the new stuff, and it was on sale, and it's this, I'll try to. I'll post the YouTube video too where they were talking about their factory. So this is Uggy, I think I'm saying it right, Uggy pizza. This one, the ingredients, it says cauliflower crust, but y'all, this does not taste like cauliflower. This is not what you would think cauliflower would taste like. So, you know, if you eat gluten-free, usually, especially vegan, it's very dense. Like the joke that, like, back in the day, the bread tasted like cardboard, or like you're eating, you know, a brick. That's what I always used to say. There's just flat, like everything. This pizza right here, this is freaking delicious. And it's the most fluffy, like, tasting like pizza I can remember because I've had in a long time. So it wasn't super expensive. It was comparable to the diet pizzas, and it's got Beyond Meat sausage crumbles on it. So that was really good. I will definitely be buying that again. And from my kombucha lovers, I'm going to just start sharing. I always send these to my best friend because we love GT's kombucha. But there's a new flavor of kombucha out. And this is freaking delicious. Glorious grapefruit. So it's got grapefruit juice, lime juice, and hops in it. I don't usually drink or consume a lot of hops because they can have estrogenic type properties to them. But, you know, I could maybe make an exception for this now and then because this was really, really good. Sorry, I'm not sharing with Instagram. This was really tasty, and I will definitely be looking for this one again. I think kombucha kind of gets a bad rap because people get this, I don't even want to say the word because it's really going to put people off, but it's fermented. It's a fermented beverage. And I, you know, like, I told my partner this week when he tried this, I said, do you see this? Do you see this, Sam? I sent it to you. It was so good. So I told my partner when he tried this, I was like, it's kind of tastes like wine cooler. And it kind of does. It's not going to get you wasted or anything, obviously. I've homebrewed kombucha before, and I could probably do a video of me brewing kombucha sometime, how it started SCOBY. I've posted it on my page. My dad has it down to a freaking science. Like, my dad has, like, the book of kombucha that, like, he used to, like, record everything about every single batch that he did. So, no, not kimchi flavor. It says glorious grapefruit, but I've had cayenne flavored kombucha before. And ooh, the trilogy is one of my favorites, and that one's not spicy, but I have taken cayenne extract in a tincture form and added to that because I love it spicy. So my dad's recipe that he makes, he brews his own homebrew kombucha, and then he's got one that I think he calls Double Dragon's Brew, and he adds like ginger, turmeric, cayenne pepper, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Hibiscus is really, really tasty. I'll have to repost it on my page again because I have posted it before, but you know, kombucha, if you brew it yourself, can be super, super cheap. You just have to have time. And, you know, now that my kid has gone back to school, I have way more time on my hands. And this is like, she's only been in school for 2 days, but I'm like, as I said in my previous videos, would get up in the morning, she'd come here, I'd take care of her all morning until I left my house at 2 to drop her off at her dad's house, and then I would go to work. And I would work until midnight, basically. So it's like, there was no, you know, really alone time. Usually it's like on the job 24/7. And that's what parenting can be like, but some people have the money and choose to pay to put their kids in childcare. Some people have family that can help take care of their kids. All of our family is out of state. So it's a trade-off because we got to spend a lot of time with our daughter, you know, individually because we live in separate homes now for the last few years. But it also comes at the price of like your personal time is very, very low. So I have all this time now. I'm like, I can go to the gym. Well, I probably just work out here. I start doing yoga again, do my physical therapy for my sciatic, start playing my cello again. I've been trying to learn how to play cello. I have an electric cello I got a few years ago. The interest, like, you know, this is what we're talking about, giftedness. So, you know, being neurodiverse, being on the gifted spectrum, I probably have family that has ADHD or something like that. Like, I could tell you stories, but, you know, getting really, really deep into learning about stuff. Like, I have a father who, I have never met anyone like this in my life. You know those really thick computer manuals that they give you that are like, to me, boring as heck. Like, he'll read the whole thing from front to back. Like, and I'll say as someone who is an atheist, like, yeah, I did grow up in a religious household and I did read some parts of the Bible when I was younger. I'm not going to say I read it front to back, but, you know, and that does help when people want to talk to you about religious stuff. You're like, I do know some of the stuff, but I was never the person that like was that interested to like, you know, memorize verses and know the whole freaking thing. But like my father's probably read the Bible, I don't even know how many times front to back. Like he knew this thing inside out. So same thing with computers. Like he'd read a computer manual that to me is like the most boring thing on the planet, soak it all up and then be like, okay, what's next? You know, it's like there's an insatiable like desire for learning and how things are and all the little ins and outs. So I was thinking about this today. Hopefully I don't break this. As I said, my 4.5, who will be 5 years old in December, child, has been in school for 2 days. And granted, I'm sure lots of parents have issues transitioning when their kids go to school, but I already knew it was going to come. Like, her teacher's like, you know, I'm having trouble getting her to stay on task and listen. And she's doing, you know, like things like telling me no. And I'm not even really like particularly like upset about that per se. Like, yes, I want her to listen to her teacher. And I'm going to preface all of this by saying, I do know that teachers are very underpaid. I mean, one of my best friends teaches. Like, it's a hard job. And every kid that you deal with, they're going to have a different home life, a different family, different stuff going on. And we just really don't invest enough into our school system. And I'm sure, like, I don't work in the school system. So there's so many complicated things to it that it's like, where do you even start with that? So my daughter's class has like 14 kids in it, which is nice. It's not too big, not too small, but she's never really been around this many kids. So this is a whole new level of social interaction. I've noticed the last few days that when I packed her lunch, I've been packing her lunch because she's a gluten-free vegan kid, you know, she's not eating as much as she usually would, and kids go through these little phases. And I'll start taking some pictures of some of her lunches for the people that are interested, the parents that are like, what do you feed a gluten-free vegan child? And that's another video to go into. And there's some different opinions on, sorry, I'm trying to fix my Instagram phone. There's some different opinions on how people go about transitioning their kids when they're babies from different types of food. I did baby-led weaning with my kid. Sounds wrong what I just said, but I think that's what it's called, baby-led weaning. So you don't really give your kid a lot of baby food. You give them a lot of solids. So we can talk about it in another video. With anything, as a parent, do your research, talk to your doctors, make sure your kid's getting proper nutrition. I have a background in nutrition, so I have literally gotten into, I'd say, debates with my child's doctor, who is not vegan, unfortunately, about this, and that's a whole nother thing. But my daughter doesn't have any deficiencies. She's fine. And she was a premature baby, but that's based off of my health problems. And this is why I say, just because someone's vegan doesn't mean that they're untouched by anything. We, probably more of us than the average person, has issues, because there's a lot of people that go vegan for health reasons, and maybe we'll call that plant-based, because maybe they're not ethically vegan. But so packing my daughter's lunches. Yeah, it's going to take her a while to get used to the routine. It's change. That's even a change for an adult. It's like starting a new job, but it's interesting. It's interesting, I'll say, this whole experience as a parent, especially being in my 40s and having much more perspective than in my 20s and life experience, that it's like, and going through therapy for the last year and a half now, over a year and a half, that it's just such an interesting perspective to watch something from the other side of it, and it's a lot of, I'd say triggering, not necessarily in a bad way, but just memories of school and being a kid and all the things that I dealt with, and it just refreshes it in my mind. So yeah, my kid not eating all her lunches, and I figured, and I asked her dad about it, and I'm like, she's probably talking in the lunchroom the whole time. Because everyone who meets my child is like, wow, your kid's really good at talking. And I'm like, yeah. She has not really been on devices other than getting some educational TV. She likes to talk. She likes to interact with people. And I come from a family of talkers, so I get it. But this child will have to learn that, there's a time to talk, and, if you want to eat, you got to eat when you get the time. It's an adjustment. It's raising a child from a family that comes from a lot of neurodiversity. And I'll say my child's father was diagnosed gifted when he was really young, and he's probably has some other neurodivergent things going on. But so was I. Her dad used to get called the human dictionary. My kids, and I used to get called, I still get called the human encyclopedia. People think that I know everything, and I'm like, I don't know everything. I know a lot. I'm dropping my phone here, guys. I need stands. I need gear. I need to figure it out. Okay, sorry. Getting too worked up. That's how you know we're having fun. I'm Italian. I can't talk without my hands. So yeah, so the human dictionary and the human encyclopedia had a child. What happens now? It's interesting, and I love my kid, but it's so fascinating to me to see the development. And I know every kid is different. You really don't know what you're gonna get. So yeah, not eating her lunches yet, saying no to the teacher, and I have to say maybe this is just me, maybe this is a neurodivergent thing, maybe this is the fact that I grew up in a very strict religious household, that I don't believe in the idea of what's the word I want to say for it, just blind obedience. I let my kids say no to me. I do, and then I'll have a discussion with her, but I try to present my kid with options. That doesn't mean she always gets the choice. Sometimes I'll be like, you can eat this or you can eat that. You can wear this or you can wear that. Like, because everybody likes to have choices. And I heard a child psychologist talk about this once, but it's like, kids have very little control over their lives. So choices, even if they're limited choices, are more fun than like just being told what to do all day like that. You know, and as someone who grew up in a single parent household after the age of 8, it was like there was no discussion. There was do what I do because I said it. And I don't, you know, lots of us were raised this way. But I do let her question to a degree. But we're definitely gonna have to talk about why it's important for her to pay attention in class and to find a way to work with her teacher, not against her teacher. Because we know all of us neurodivergent, neurospicy people, like, we don't like to be told no unless you give us a good reason. Do my parents want my daughter to be raised with religion? Her dad's side of the family really doesn't have any issues. Like, they don't butt in about how we raise our kid. Like I said, they live in Canada though, so they really don't see her. And then my dad is kind of like, it's your kid, you know, like it's changed a lot. So the relationship between my dad and I and our understanding of like where we both sit with spirituality and religion, we've kind of come to a mutual agreement about it, even though we have different points of views. So my dad does not push that on me either, which I really appreciate, because being a kid who I will say, when I was younger, even now as an adult, like I've mentioned this before, I don't like to go into churches. They're beautiful, but are they triggering. And I don't like people praying around the dinner table. I know they're doing their thing. So I'm not like angry with them, but it makes me very uncomfortable because of my own CPTSD, my own religious CPTSD. So, you know, and it's weird because when we talk about schools, I grew up in, I'd say like the northwestern side of Virginia, not West Virginia, very close to West Virginia, but Virginia. So we had interesting things back in the 90s with our schools. I don't know how they did some of the things that they did. Like, we had like a off-site trailer for some classes, but there also, as far as I can remember, was some type of religious study group thing for school. I don't know. This is very foggy in my mind, so I have to, I guess, dig that up with my therapist. But it's very weird to get pulled out of your classes and go to these kind of things. It's just, I don't know how they manage that. That's a strange thing. But, you know, down south where I grew up, like I said in my last video, I grew up right outside of Mennonite communities. So I don't remember, there's a whole spectrum of like people, how involved people are in those communities. Some people are very, very to the conservative, secluded side of it, and some are a little more modern. You know, I see people using cell phones now there, which was when I was a kid. No one would have used, I don't even feel like a telephone half the time, but maybe like a landline, but no one had cell phones. So yeah, school is interesting, and the whole mixing of like how religious it was down in that area. Because, I mean, let's be real, I grew up in the Bible Belt. Like, it's different. But yeah, so with the neurodivergent thing, there's I've talked to this with a lot of my other friends who are on the spectrum in some regard, that like, it's just, we don't like to do things just because people tell us to do them. Questioning, like that's a well-known, documented symptom of gifted children, is that they question things, even to the point that it can get mistaken for, you know, disobedience or for like pushback, or I can't think of the word I want to say right now, but yeah, for being difficult. But I think it's the fact that, like, a lot of us, especially gifted kids, or at least for me, like, I was mentally far above my peers to the point where it's like I always wanted to talk to kids older than me, because it's like kids that were my age were just not interested in what I was interested in. And my social level, though, was oddly kind of below other kids in a sense. I actually, when I was a teenager, was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, but now that I've gotten older and learned more about neurodivergence, I really think that's kind of what it was. Because it's funny thinking about things like the lunchroom, for example. I remember being a kid and being in school, and I had a lot, obviously, with CPTSD of things going on with my family life. They were very stressful. So I know on top of neurodivergence, I was dealing with like probably disassociative type of things as a child, but there also was like, I was always that kid that was very teetering on the scale of like how engaged I was, you know, like how overstimulated was I, and just trying to maintain that was a lot. So I see this a lot with kids. Like, I was that kid that would sit in class and shake my leg all day, you know, under the table, and whoever was sitting in front of me, I'm so sorry, whoever sat in front of me in middle school and high school, and they had that bar on the back of the desk, and my leg would just be going, and sometimes people would turn around with me and be like, stop! Stop shaking your leg, you're driving me nuts. Or, you know, like the kids that are like tapping the buttons, tap, 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 click, 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 click. Like stimming. This is what stimming is. We're trying to stimulate ourselves. It's boredom. It's like, I have no dopamine. I need something like the click, 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 pop, 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 pop. You know, or they've actually, I forget, I have to find the video again. I don't know where it is, but someone was talking about being diagnosed with ADHD. And they were talking about remote meetings that they had, and finding that this is an adult, during their remote meetings, if they were to take a piece of paper and doodle on the paper while they were doing the meeting, they actually could focus better on the meeting because they were getting some type of stimulation. And I had classes where it was like that. Like, I was utterly freaking bored. So, I don't know, I don't think I mentioned this in my last video, but I had taken honors chemistry, and once again, younger than all the other kids in the class, and I had this teacher that like ran it like a college course, had to read tons and tons of stuff that to me was boring at the time, and I don't know, his style didn't quite suit up with me at the time, and I had a lot going on, so I can't blame it all on the teacher. But eventually, I ended up dropping the class because I'm like, I can't focus to write a paper every single week at the end of the week, like a 5-page. I can't do, this is not working for me. So I dropped the class. I took it for like 6 weeks. And then the next year I went back and took regular, boring, you know, level 1 chemistry. And for the first half of that class, I like slept. I was so utterly bored. And I drew in the class all the time because I was so bored. And, you know, that poor teacher, it was his first year, like, not subbing. It was his actual class, like his class. And he used to come to school every day and say to him, I'm Mr. K, like, welcome to chemistry. And we're like, we know, we've been in this class for 3 months. Like, we know who you are. Yes, welcome. Like, Mr. Pepe. So we hazed him so bad. That poor teacher. I don't know how people teach. I don't know. Maybe my friend could tell me, are middle school students worse or high school students? I really don't know, because I heard a report once where they surveyed Americans to find who were the angriest people in America. And you guys want to guess who the angriest people in America are? The group? Males, 13-year-old males, 13-year-old. hormones and life, that's a hard age. So I know everybody keeps joking with me. Wait until your kid is a preteen teenager. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know what I have. But at the same time, I don't want to like crush her spirit either and be like, you must be a good little soldier of the school, So we're gonna have to meet in the middle. And I did mention to her teacher today, they have all these new texting apps and stuff where they can, instead of like the gold star system, like they do all these little things on the app that give points to the kids and they can get stuff. And I think that's going to be a learning tool that may be valuable to my child. But you can communicate with the teacher directly through the app, which is really interesting. And this is where she mentioned to me that my daughter's saying no and not paying attention and, kind of shutting down when she's not getting to do what she wants, which might just be 4.5, 5-year-olds. And I told her, I said, she's got 2 parents who are neurodivergent. It's tricky sometimes with neurodivergent kids. And this is where I say, like, teachers don't get paid enough, because I did, before my daughter was put into school, I had her assessed for the gifted program here in Buffalo. And she did score, I think, like 5 or something, but you have to be like a 7 or higher to get into the program. And my feeling about it probably is my daughter has one eye that's kind of wanders, and she's got corrective glasses and a patch that she wears for it. And I think it has slowed down her reading, because when I was her age, I was like reading full books. Like every Dr. Seuss book. I went to kindergarten, I'm like, I can read all this. So writing was harder for me though, for some reason. I mean, I guess they're 2 different skills, but I could read great. I just couldn't write yet, so I was learning to write. But I think she struggles a little bit because of the difference in her 2 eyes. Just watching my comments. So she was not catapulted into the gifted program yet, which is fine. Like, her teacher said to me today, she said, I haven't even moved on to the academic part of classes yet. And which I get and I appreciate, but that's not what I meant when I was talking about gifted. Like, I don't need my kid to get the A's, all the straight A's. I don't need her to be at the top of the class. Like, I just need her to be engaged and not bored. Because you know what happens to neurodivergent and gifted kids when they are bored? They get in trouble. I could tell you some stories about all of the bad things that I knew that people did in school that were on the spectrum in my family, but I'll probably save them for another day. But we'll just say trouble. As much detention as you could get, because it's like, why not? We're utterly bored in class. Like, so I'm hoping that we'll see. Time tells all, and parenting, especially with your first child, like you really, everyone tells you that you have no idea, and you're like, yeah, everybody says that, until you have a kid, and then you're like, no, they're right. You really have no clue. It's crazy. So there are so many factors to take in here, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but this is what I'm saying about having this discussion with my child and the no thing. So a lot of times we just want to answer why. And I feel like I get it. Like, teachers have a limited amount of time. So it does come down to the parent to have that discussion with your child outside of class, But it's like, if you explain to us why, we're more willing to go along with what you're saying. But because I told you so, this is not a sufficient answer. And it's kind of the idea of, to me, I don't know how everybody else's brain works, but I feel like my brain is like big picture in. So when people try to get me to focus on the details, it's like when I took algebra in school, and I would just look at the problem, and it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like my brain would just take it and be like, boop, 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 answer. And people were like, how did you do that? Like, show me the steps. And I'm like, what do you mean show? Like, teach you the steps. Like, I just looked at it. It's like turning your car on or something. Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, why? Why do I have to show you the steps? If I could just do it. this is an aggravating thing about school. And I do, as an adult, see the value in learning all those little steps. And I've really learned the value in persistence. But yeah, the whole seeing the big picture first versus the do this now because I told you so, that doesn't, for my brain, it doesn't work. Like, I want to know why. I want to know the whole backstory. I want to know what the value of this thing is that I'm doing. What is it contributing to everyone else around me? And why should I care what everybody else thinks? I mean, it's nice to be nice to other people, right? But it's, I don't know. Y'all have to tell me, my neuro-spicy people and my neurotypical people, like, how does your brain think about things like this? Do you like being told just to do something just because it said so? I feel like no one would like that, but maybe some people just have more faith in adults that they have good intentions. So this, I guess I'll end this whole discussion, and I'll probably come back if anybody has questions or more like follow-up stories about things that they dealt with in school. Like, I'll definitely say, I think the teachers that work with gifted kids, and I've posted quite a few different videos and TED Talks and stuff about this, they see the value in that, like, everything doesn't have to always be linear in the way that the schools teach it with kids. Like, sometimes it's more fun for kids, I'd probably say the ADHD kids too, to like kind of be all over the place. It's like a puzzle, like we're putting the puzzle together, but it's like I feel like with a different type of brain, this is what I was trying to tell the teacher today. Like, I get it. I get that you need the class to run a certain way, but it's like, I'm not talking academics here. I'm trying to bring to your attention that you're dealing with a kid who probably has a different thought process than other kids. So you have to work the thought process. What's the reward? What's the value? Where these kids are not dumb, they're smart. Where can they negotiate and feel like they put in input to get what they want? So that they kind of value whatever they're doing more. So the one story, I think I've written about this before. I don't think I've ever talked about this, but I remember being in a class once where the assignment was we had to get in groups, which groups were always a little weird for me. I used to like to work by myself, but now I've gotten much better at working with other people and kind of letting them put their skills and inputs in different places. And I've had to learn this in my career, that my rigid way of doing things, or the way my brain sees them and just picks them up, doesn't work for everybody. So you have to be really open to the idea that though something may make total sense to you and work for you, that for somebody else, they're like, that is... And I'll say that about my own father. Like, he's very, very detail orientated and has a reason and a specific way he does everything that he does. And we could say maybe there's a little OCPD there, but he's not always wrong about the things that he does and the way he does them. It's just like, what's the actual probability of the factors that you're concerned with? And how big of a deal is it if your project flops? You know, so, maybe that's a thing about gifted kids, is that like we're not used to not excelling, or we're not used to failure. And sometimes we do also have to learn to the value of failing and picking ourselves up again. And as I said, persistence is not always a trait that everyone is just handed. Some people aren't really good at things right away, so they actually end up being better in the long run when they persist and continue to do it, versus someone who's very good at it and then gets tired of it and drops it. So it's reaching the peak of kind of where you're really good at something and then overcoming that peak persistence. But the group project that we worked in when I was in school, I don't remember how old I was. It was either like it must have been middle school. because I'm picturing the room in my head, and my head is saying middle school. It was a project where we had to create a business, like a fake business, and we had to like write it up. I'd almost say like this is kind of like a marketing thing, like how are you going to build the business, how, you know, draw us a picture of how everything's going to work and pitch your product to us. And I remember the group that I was in, we wanted to do something that had to do with orange groves. I don't know why we decided to do that. And then somehow cows got involved, and we're like, you know, you got the oranges, you're making the orange juice, you have the leftover stuff from the orange juice. What are you going to do with the leftover stuff from the orange juice? And somehow, I don't know where we got this idea. We're like, we'll feed it to the cows, and then the cows will make milk, and then we'll sell the milk. And then when the cows die that we use for milk, sorry, this is not vegan, because I was not vegan at the time, but this is kind of what happens to cows. After we're done getting the milk from the cows to sell, then we slaughter the cows. And I remember our teacher, when we brought this idea up, when they asked like, what's your project? And we showed the whole thing that we were doing. They were like, no, that's too much. Like, I asked for like one product. And the funny thing now as an adult, we were kind of like, oh, okay, like, we'll just sell oranges or whatever, or just make orange juice or something. But it's funny as an adult is that I'm like, we weren't really wrong. Like, we had this really big scale idea. Like, we're looking at a really big picture thing. This is how the real world does work, actually. Like, everything is not always, you know, in a business, you're trying to maximize everything and use every avenue you can. This is how this country works. Like, we don't waste anything, down to the the point that we dump our fluoride in our water. Like, you know, it's a waste product. We are always trying to find money off of waste. So it's interesting as an adult to rethink that story and the way all of our child's brains, these little pre-teenagers, are thinking about this business idea. And the way that the school teacher didn't mean to, because they wanted us to keep it on task and keep it simple. But it's like the message that we felt like we were getting was like, that's wrong. That's not what I asked you to do. But it's like, but it's not really wrong. This is the way it does kind of work. So this is also how I mentioned in one of my other videos about being neurodivergent and learning new things, and that desire to like take everything in before like really feeling like we've settled on it, you know, instead of just saying like, again, maybe this was why I had history teachers who were, I don't know, I loved world history, but man, was American history boring. And I don't know if it was my teacher or if it was just because it's all sounded so similar to me. The dates, I'm not good with dates. I'm great with saying the guy did this thing, but the dates thing for me, I don't know why it doesn't stick. Not how my brain works. But like, I'm losing my track. So anyway, there's it's got to be something that you're interested in, something you can see the big picture. And I guess that history is just there's so much to it that it's like hard to, it almost would have, I guess now that I think about, had made more sense if I'm like, what's the message you're trying to tell me? Like, that kind of always aggravated me in school. And I get it. They want you to use your critical thinking skills, but like they're trying to send you a message through some story, and you're like, can you just tell me the message and then let me backtrack the story? Like, I like to go backwards. I don't know if anyone else's brain is like that, if that's like how other people are, but I like to hear the big idea and then deconstruct it. And I can see this in people that are very mechanical too, where they're like, don't tell me how to build this little part of a car. Let me rip the car apart. It's not particularly my thing, but that wanting to touch and feel and see and know every little piece of something. Like, so I know that's a little all over the place, but that's part of some of the stuff I dealt with in school. Being neurodivergent, there's just so much. The social thing was, ooh, that was a lot. I had friends who also were like in the gifted program. I remember there was a while when I was in middle school where they took some of us out to take French class. I don't really know many people who speak French anymore, but it helped me with Spanish later because the structure of the language, the way you speak it, is much different than English. My dog's over here bugging me. And I remember going to those classes and learning different things. We got taken out of the classes with the other kids because we were like bored, but I do remember a point in time where they kind of like cut back on the gifted program. It was a very weird thing in the early-ish mid-90s where they kind of, I don't know if it was just for funding in our area or if the message I felt like I was getting is that they thought that there was some type of preferential treatment for gifted kids, that we're getting to do things that other kids weren't getting to do. But it's like, what do you do? You know, like let the kids sit in class until they're literally so bored that they're getting in trouble and they're sitting in detention and going to night school and having to get their GED later when they're really smart kids. I mean, what do you want? You have to engage these kids somehow. And the social aspects, like I said, are tricky. I don't see it so much in my own kid yet, but she comes from a lot of other much more social people than me, so maybe she didn't inherit that. But yeah, the whole social anxiety thing, if I realize now as an adult, I'm really good with people one-on-one or small groups of people that are like 5 people or less if I know all of them. But if it is too big of a group, it's overwhelming. And it's not just the interactions of trying to deal with the different people. And maybe a little bit of that is how some of us have to learn how to mask, which this is going to be a fun journey as a parent with a child. The world does need to be more open and understanding of neurotypical or neurodiverse people. But also as neurodiverse people, it's hard because we have to meet in the middle somewhere too to understand that like we may not always be accommodated in every manner. But I think understanding ourselves and being able to communicate that like, look, like I know you're trying to tell me something and I'm not, it's not sticking with me. I need you to explain it a different way. Or I literally just tell people that I work with, I have a great working relationship with some of the people I work with, and I'll just tell them like, can you please literally go show me the thing, tell me the thing, be very blunt and very direct with me. I'm not going to get upset. Please tell me what the problem is and how you want it fixed. I don't need all that game of the social, like, you know, like to a degree, but not the same as other people. So my issue when the environment is too overstimulating, it's all of the sounds, the lights, the little body language of people, like it's to the point where I've thought about it recently with the thing with my kid eating lunch is I think I ate all right when I was a kid. I don't know. It's foggy. But I used to get sick all the time. Does anybody else, granted, I don't think it was only gluten, probably a little bit of it was gluten, but did anybody else go to school and get sick like every time they had lunch? And I used to have to go sit in like the nurse's office for like half an hour or something because I'd be so sick to my stomach. And I think maybe part of it was the food that wasn't sitting well with me, but the other part of it, I think, was the overwhelming environment for me. So, because it's wild, because I could sit for like half an hour or something and have all the stimulation taken away, and I'll be fine. Like, all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not sick anymore. And it's crazy as a kid that, like, they don't know what's going on with you. So they kind of assume that you're faking it. Like, oh, this kid just wants to get out of class. They're pretending that they're sick so they don't have to go to class. And it's like, no, I literally was physically ill. This, I feel like, still can happen to me as an adult. Like, just the overstimulation of too much going on. And I still will I've learned to communicate it better, but I'm an isolator. When I start feeling like that, I need, as I've said in another video, go sit in a dark room, turn the lights off, no sounds. Like, I don't want to be touched. Like, I don't want people interacting. I just need my nervous system to calm down. Maybe that's some CPTSD too. There's so many overlapping things here. It's like, how do you begin to separate it all out? But there's a balance. Everything in the human body and the brain, it all seems to be like there's the bell curve of like homeostasis and like the happy point that our body wants to be at, the seesaw, and like too much does this and not enough does this. And it's like the dopamine in our brains that are structurally different. And if you look at image scans that have different activity in them, like finding the sweet spot for that dopamine, for that focus is, I think it's like almost like a skill that you have to learn. And I don't know how it's going to go as a parent, being more self-aware and trying to communicate that with my child and how to for my kid to regulate. And I think that it's a learning process for everyone. And I think we're only just now starting to become more aware of how many people are on the neurodivergent spectrum and what that means, because all we used to see in the media was like Rain Man, you know, like they're the extremes of what it could be. And yes, it can be that, but it can be much more subtle too. I know many people who are adults in their 30s and 40s that are getting diagnosed, and because there's such a genetic environmental component to it, a lot of people are getting diagnosed because their children get diagnosed. So if you watch Dr. Amon's videos, who is a psychiatrist that does brain imaging, if you watch any of Gabor Mate's talks or read his books, there's a lot of what we believe to be genetic association with neurodivergence. So the funny thing is that people, even for me, like, this is how we live our lives all the time. This is every day. This is normal to us. So when people question it, we're like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you don't do this or you don't do that, or your brain doesn't, like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. And when people's kids get diagnosed, neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, gifted, a lot of people almost, I think they like look in the mirror and they question themselves because they're like, wait, everyone in my family is like this. And it's like, yeah, because it's like, it's genetic. In the least, it's epigenetic, environmental. But I think that I'd have to go back and look and share some stuff where they've shown associations with certain genes and neurodivergence. So it's going to be an interesting journey, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with any of us for having different brains. I think we're just different. Neurodivergent doesn't mean like lesser. It just means that we have different strengths in different areas and other areas that we have to work on. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I heard someone else talking about this. I wish I could remember who said it. There was a study that was done on schools of fish, and the fish that were in the studies that most resembled humans that would have ADHD, the type that were the ones that would fly off and deviate from the school of fish, like we call these the ADHD fish, they were more adventurous. They're the types that would go out and find new food sources or new safe places, you know, to live, for the schools of fish to live. So there's value in all different types of brains in society. We need the ones that kind of stick together and kind of conform and become the mass of the school of fish that are going to help to keep the whole of everyone safe. But if all of us were those fish that just sit and swim in the same place and never leave, like we would die because we would run out of food. So learning to respect that we're all different and also acknowledge that what we have and what we need to work with it's work. And I just hope that in the workplace, in the school environment, that eventually down the line, people become more aware. I feel like it's already becoming a little better, but I know when I grew up, it's funny to say as someone from a neurodivergent family, I'm not like proud of this, but it was like my parents' generation, the boomers, because they were so into this culture of being American and being, you know, that kind of almost like the stereotype, you do this and that, and this is your American life, and wanting to fit in. Like anyone that was different, a lot of times got made fun of, or it was like, what is wrong with that person? And it's like, I can see it so easy now. Like when I go out in public, people's behavior is not, I wouldn't call it like weird or bad. I just see sometimes people doing things. I could see someone's ticking. I've known people with Tourette's now that have not only verbal Tourette's, but like physical Tourette's tics. So when I see people doing certain things sometimes, I'm like, oh, okay, this may be what's going on. I've known people who have strokes and the way they emotionally regulate after their brain has had a stroke. Like, you just start to recognize these things when you become educated about them. And another one that we could talk about, I know we talked about Fantasia, which is the mind's eye, how much you can visualize in your mind. The other one is inner monologue. I know everybody's talked about that, but what is the voice inside your head? Some people don't really have a voice inside their head. And I know people who verbalize almost everything, neurodivergent people, almost to their own fault sometimes, that they cannot seem to stop and hold in the words that they are thinking in their head, which is, it's tricky because people who are neurotypical are like, what are you doing? But I've discovered this over the last decade with my neurodivergent friends. Some people just say everything out loud. They talk to themselves about what they're going to do with their day. They get up in the morning, I got to go to work later, and I got to do this thing, I got to do that, and blah, 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 blah. A lot of us are doing that in our head. We're doing a mental like talk in our head. These people are not talking in their head. They are verbalizing it outside, because I'm not one of those people, but I'm telling you, the people that I know, it helps them to focus and to plan their day. So there's all different types of people in the world, and we have to adjust our expectations of like how much we all really can be alike. Because, you know, like I said before, like Dr. Amen has identified, I want to say, I might be wrong, I have to go look on his website again, I'll repost it, but he has a brain test that you can take online where you answer a certain number of questions, and it gives you an approximate idea of which brain subset you fit into. And I thought he had gotten up to 18 types. I might be wrong. But can you imagine 18 types with overlap in different areas? That's a lot of, maybe it was 16. See, specific numbers are a little foggy for me. I have the big picture though. The little things sometimes are what hold me up. But it's, just think like how many people you know, and you could know 20 people and every single one of them, their brain's functioning differently than yours. So the expectation that like everyone's behavior is gonna make sense to you and they're thinking the same way, it's just not, that's not reality, guys. So it's fun if you want to take on the challenge of learning how other people's experiences are. Like, it's only going to help you to communicate and get along with people better. So yeah, I would I don't tend to get a lot of comments, and if I don't, I don't. I just like to make the videos just because talking about stuff, deep conversations, like, just kind of helps me to, one, get it out of my head. I don't know if y'all are like this, but like when I get a thought, when I'm like the hyper focus of some thought, I'm like, oh, I need to like, I need to get these big thoughts out of my head. But I'm always interested in hearing what other people have to say, because I know some of y'all have had some experiences in school. I'll go back and I'll repost some of the links of things that I talked about. Not sure when exactly. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. I'm still adjusting to this new schedule. As I said, it's interesting to have a lot of free time. And I'm definitely going to fill that time. I can relax and sit down and do nothing, but it takes a lot. And I just like to go. I feel like there's so much life to live. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night. And good luck to all the parents with kids that are just starting school this month. I'm sure some of y'all are excited. It's kind of weird for me that I'm used to spending so much time with my kid, but those are the phases of parenting. Like, we all have to learn our stuff to get ready to go out in the world. So everybody, have a good night. Let me know if you have any really good school stories that you want to share or that are coming back to you. See you guys later.